talk about making a difference in the world. Joseph said, in fact, what the devil meant for evil, God has turned for good. He's made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. He didn't wait until I got out of the pit. He didn't wait until I got out of the prison. He didn't wait until all my problems were solved. He didn't wait until everything made sense. But He anointed me in the midst of my trouble. He anointed me in the midst of my heartache. Come on, you sweetheart of a young girl that's going back to a parent that hates the fact that you speak in tongues. Hear me today. You may be troubled, but you are not distressed. You may be perplexed, but you are not in despair. Young man, you may be persecuted, but you are not forsaken. You may be cast down, but you are not destroyed. You've got a treasure in an earthen vessel that says you can be great for God today. Amen. I don't need to make this so simple. But you know, the world that I grew up in was so hard on 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds. I don't know if it's that way now. I have a feeling that it is. But you know what I found out in junior high school? If you're short, the world will make fun of you because you're short. But if you're tall, the world will pick on you because you're tall. If you're skinny, they will bust on you because you're too skinny. But if you're not real skinny, watch out, because we're going to get you for that one too. And if you're somewhere in the middle, then you feel like you're a nobody because you're just like everybody else. You just can't win. You'll always be a loser. You'll always be a zero. There'll always be some problem that the devil will use to manipulate you. And those things don't even matter. And in fact, God forbid that some skinny kid gets picked on in the church. God forbid that some fat kid gets picked on in the youth group. God forbid that some short kid is embarrassed in the house of God. God forbid that some tall guy is made fun of in the kingdom of God. Hey, that may be the way it is in the world, but let it not be named by us. But think about it. If hell is going to slap you around just because of those superficial things like how you look, how hard is it going to be if your parents are split up? How hard is it going to be if you have a disease that you were born with? How hard is it going to be if you face something like death at an early age because someone you love leaves this world unexpectedly? You're going to be bombarded by messages that say you're nothing, you're a nobody. You may have felt the power of God, but you've got too many problems. That's where we're living right now. You may shout and dance at camp, but you've got too much mess in your life. Hey, if it's not stuff like that, it could be just as simple as you knowing before I came to camp, I was a real jerk. I said some dumb stuff. I did some things I wish I would have never done. And all the way back home, the devil's going to remind you, you're a fool if you think things are different. You've still got problems at home that are going to eat you up and spit you out. But I say no. There is a God that is leaving this camp with every camper. And no matter what it is that you think is the biggest obstacle between you being used of God, I say that God is able. With you, it may be impossible, but with Him, all things are possible. In fact, you are possible. Where's Brother Elliot at? He stepped out? Come up here, brother. And this guy just keeps working. He won't ever see me. if I was as good looking as you, I wouldn't have to be as tall as I am. But I don't have it like you have it. In fact, there's no way I can wear that suit, that tie, and that shirt, and come across as cool as you're looking at me. No way. I wouldn't even try. And you know what I noticed about him? Out on the basketball court? He may not be as tall as me, but with all the moves he got, he don't need to be as tall as me. There's no way. That's why I tried to stay off the basketball court as much as possible the other day. Because this guy would have made me look like a fool. But you know what? He could look up here at this 6'6" preacher, and he might be tempted to think, I can never be a preacher unless I'm 6'6". You may think that's silly, but that's how the devil is. That's really how he messes with our head. You may say, you know, I really would like to be someone that God uses, but man, I was at that camp, and that preacher, man, he's so tall. In fact, you got more hair than Brother Miller. How could you possibly be used of God unless all that hair's gone? That's how the devil plays with our mind. But you know what's awesome? Brother Elliot here, he's a pastor. He's a sexual youth leader. He was the dean of the camp. God puts people in our lives, young people, that we can look up to or we can relate to. People that are similar to us in certain ways. Now, I don't think Jamal really cares to be as tall as I am. But if the devil was to use that against him, there could be someone like Brother Elliot that can say, hey, I'm not 6'6", and I'm pretty better than that guy. So you're going to be all right. But you know what? Brother Elliot had to pay a price for that. Do you hear what I'm saying? Now, this is just something simple. Thank you, gentlemen. But what if it was... What if it was the fact that one of these young people are growing up without a daddy? How could someone with a daddy put an arm around the shoulder and say, it's no big deal, you can make it? Now, we can love them, we can help them, but we don't know what they're going through. What if it's one of these kids that has a disease, and someone that's been just about healthy their whole life puts an arm around the shoulder and says, man, it don't matter, your disease can't stop God? That'll encourage them a little bit. But what if someone that's been there? What if someone that's fought disease their whole life, but God has blessed them and God has used them? What if that person comes and put an arm around your shoulder and says, you know what, I've been there. I know what you're going through. I know what you're feeling. Now, I know my story's not any different than a lot of people's story in here, but growing up without a dad for me created some issues. And I'm not saying God made it happen. In fact, the fact that my dad was a pastor, a preacher that failed God, that created some big issues when I decided I was going to be a preacher. I'm not saying God made that happen. In fact, when my daddy ended up in jail and he's got about 8 more years left, that created some issues for me too. In fact, I even felt awkward a few weeks ago sending him a Father's Day card to the same prison I sent the same card to in the past. I don't say that God made that happen. But you know what I've discovered? That because that happened, what the devil meant to destroy me, what the devil meant to step on me and say, you'll be a nothing, you're not going to be anything, you're not going anywhere for God. God has used that very same thing that the devil meant for evil so that I could be a vessel that he could use to be a blessing to someone, maybe even at this camp, and say, son,